Hello, hello, welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Sydney and I am a spiritual mentor. If you've been around for a while, then thank you so much for coming back and choosing to press play on this video. As you can see from the title, today I'm talking all about fear. And I think that this is a really important topic, especially on our spiritual journeys, because fear is what holds us back. Fear is what keeps us in that survival state. Fear is really the biggest issue that so many of us are trying to overcome. And often we don't even realize that it's actually the issue, right? We see things on a very surface level experience sometimes. So the stress that we feel day in, day out, the root of that stress stems from fear. And the worry that we have about our future, again, it is rooted in fear. So many of us, most of us around the world are actually living with fear on a daily basis. And in my work, I work with empaths, people pleasers, sensitive souls. And in my work, I am focused and dedicated to understanding our energy and mastering our energy, which includes our emotions, our thoughts, our choices, our actions, our habits, and our behaviors. Because when we master our energy, we can live in alignment. We can live with peace without the heaviness and the fear and the worry blocking us from experiencing what we want to experience. So let's dive in a little bit deeper into this topic, specifically living with fear, and why it's important for you to understand your fear and how you can support yourself in overcoming your fear. Now, I want to be completely honest with you. Yesterday, I was in my fear. I had a very emotional day yesterday, so much so that I actually sat on the couch and I felt like a little kid because I was hiding under a blanket. And the heaviness of that fear and the heaviness of the emotions that we experience, there truly is nothing like it. And I can't take that pain away from you, but I can tell you that you will move through it. And I can tell you that there is light at the end of the tunnel. And I can give you tips in how to overcome that fear so it's not part of your everyday life. I had a beautiful conversation with a client of mine recently, and for a few days, she had been feeling a lot of emotional overwhelm. She was crying nonstop, and she just felt like she couldn't get through the day. And it's really hard when that emotional overwhelm kind of comes up because so many of us are taught to box it up and just push through. But in a lot of ways, that pushing through actually is more detrimental in your journey than you might realize. And that's because fear is an energy that on a unconscious or a subconscious level, the fear tries to control us. And so many of us actually unconsciously let that fear control the decisions that we make and control the path that we take in our life. So what fear am I talking about? Well, it really depends on what fear you experience. Early on in my healing journey, I uncovered that the fear that I tend to experience is fear of judgment. And now I've gone deep and I've worked through a lot of that fear, and I can see how that fear stems from the way that I grew up and seeing a lot of judgment around me and feeling like when people are being judged, it means that they're not accepted. And so I lived a lot of my life as a people pleaser, searching for that acceptance and searching for that approval from other people. And that came from the fear of judgment, the fear of being judged. And so I lived as a smaller version of myself. I feel like I wasn't my authentic self for a long time because that fear of judgment said, oh, I can't be different. I can't live that certain way. I need to make sure that this person accepts me. I need to make sure that these people approve of me in order for me to feel worthy. Now, yesterday, the fear that was coming up for me was fear of failure and fear of the unknown. And so the thoughts that are running through my head were, I'm doing everything wrong, right? That fear of failure really becomes triggered when we feel like things aren't moving forward in the way that we desire them to. We can't see the successes yet. We don't feel fulfilled yet. We're putting in the work day in and day out, and yet there seems to be no forward movement in what we desire or the dreams that we're working towards. So that fear of failure really becomes triggered, and our mind says, I'm not enough, I'm not doing the right tasks, I'm not taking action in the right way, the path that I've chosen is wrong, right? And that fear of failure says, I'm never going to be enough, I'm never going to reach that success. And all of this energy just becomes so heavy and so draining. And we end up making choices that seem safe, right? Recently, I put out a video. You can check it out if you haven't already, that talks about shifting from surviving to thriving. And in that survival space, we're just trying to make choices to stay safe because the fear is telling us that we're not safe. Right? So for me, in that fear of failure, it said, the choices that I was making in being an entrepreneur, in pursuing a spiritual path and helping people on that spiritual path, my mind and my ego, the pain within me was creating all these thoughts focused on, this isn't safe, this isn't safe, this isn't safe. I need to choose a safer route. I need to choose a safer path in order to reach that success. And then that fear of unknown really kind of came forward for me because I don't know what the future holds. And right now I'm in a stage where there's a lot of things in my life shifting and there's a lot of things at play. And so in that unknown, fear can really be triggered, right? Because am I moving on a safe path? Am I taking the right direction for my life? Right? And so that heaviness and that overwhelming thoughts really take over, and we really feel that emotional overwhelm in that space. And again, it's all rooted from fear. Right? So that might resonate with you, whether you've experienced fear of judgment, fear of failure, fear of the unknown, right? These bigger fears, there's so many of them. And all of us can experience them in a little bit of a different way. But ultimately what happens is our thought process really, and our thought pattern really stems from not feeling safe, because that's what fear is, the feeling that you are not safe. And then the emotional overwhelm comes forward. So here are some three things that I've learned on my journey of living with fear, the process of overcoming that fear, and how to kind of keep moving forward on our journey with that sense of peace and thriving, right? What do we do when that fear comes forward? How do we overcome it? And so the first thing that I've learned is that we have to learn how to hold space for ourselves. Right? I talked earlier about how we put our emotions in a box and we kind of set it off to the side and we just keep moving through and we just keep taking action, right? That hustle mentality of I just got to push through and keep going. We weren't taught from a young age how to hold space for ourselves in our emotions, how to hold space for ourselves in our fear. And so what that ends up producing when we box it up, that energy doesn't go anywhere. The energy of the fear and the energy of the overwhelming emotions and the unsupportive thoughts, when we try and box it up and put it to the side, that energy is actually still inside of our body. And so what ends up happening is we make decisions, we make choices, and we live our life with that fear, that emotional overwhelm, and those unsupportive thoughts controlling us, because that energy, that heavy energy, is still in our body. So if you want to make decisions that are aligned, if you want to follow the path of your soul that is meant for you, if you want to pursue purpose, if you want to feel fulfillment. The only way to attain those things, to reach that higher vibrational energy, is to cleanse the energy that is already within us, the fear. And the only way to cleanse the energy of fear that is already within us is to hold space for ourselves in that feeling, right? It's like if a little child came up to you and was crying. You know that telling that little child anything is not going to be helpful in that moment, or maybe you don't know, but telling that little child anything is not going to be helpful. The only thing that that little child needs is comfort. The only thing that that little child needs is to feel seen, to feel heard, and to feel understood. And so that is exactly what you need when the fear comes forward. You need to feel seen in the fear. You need to feel heard in the fear. And you need to feel comforted and understood in the fear. And that's what holding space is, right? The fear will pass. The emotional overwhelm will pass as long as you feel it. You have to hold space for yourself. And so for me, yesterday, I was hiding under the blankets. I was crying my eyes out. I was shaking. And yet, shortly thereafter, I felt relief. And today, I'm waking up and I'm living my life not feeling that fear. And that fear is not controlling the choices that I'm making because I allowed myself to feel it. If you don't allow yourself to feel it, if you ignore it and you deny it and you avoid it and you put it in that box and you set it off to the side, that energy is still affecting the choices that you're going to make in your life. We don't want to make choices from fear. We want to make choices from trust. We want to make choices from the belief that it gets to be better and it gets to work out. We want to make choices from a compassionate, peaceful state. And the only way that we can do that is if we cleanse the energy that is in our body in this moment. So, tip number 1 for living with fear is learning how to hold space for yourself, which ultimately is letting yourself feel it. So many of us don't want to feel our fear. I actually had a conversation with a client recently and I said, what's stopping you from cleansing this emotional and energetic weight that is within you, that you're feeling? And she said, I'm afraid of my fear. I'm afraid of feeling it. That's our mind. That's our mind telling us to fear the fear because it's not safe. Yet in the practice of actually feeling it, yes, it's heavy. I am not going to downplay it. It hurts. It's dark. It is. And yet, you will come out the other side. You will. And this is something that I teach all of my clients in my one-on-one mentoring space. And it's something that I teach in my membership program, my membership community as well, is how to feel this emotional heaviness to cleanse it. Because when we feel it and when we cleanse it, we can come out the other side. Right? Energy doesn't change without you making the choice to shift that energy. So tip number 1 when it comes to living with fear is learning how to hold space for yourself. Tip number 2, this one has been so important in my journey. I've always been a sensitive person. I have been a crier my entire life. So I feel like in a way, I've always kind of held space for my fear. But what I was not doing early on in my journey was I was not getting to know my fear. Right? So if we don't know our fear, what ends up happening is that fear comes forward when we least expect it. And that fear really takes over and it controls a lot of our life. And so you're not getting to know your fear while you're in it, right? When you're in it, when that heaviness comes forward, when that weight is upon you, the only thing that you are needing to do is hold space for yourself with compassion, giving yourself grace to feel it. But when you're in a good moment, right? And this is the inner work. If you're wanting to live a life where you're thriving, if you're wanting to feel fulfilled, if you're wanting to follow your soul path and trust your intuition and all the goodness that comes with this spiritual journey, if you're wanting that, we need to do the inner work. We need to look at our energy. We need to understand what it is that is triggering us. We need to know what are the unsupportive thoughts that are trying to sway me off course. What are the ways that I beat up on myself? What are the ways that I fear life, right? So the second thing that has been super helpful for me has been getting to know my fear. And the reason why we need to get to know our fear is because our desires are on the other side. Your fear and your desires are directly connected. They're on this scale. We want this, yet we feel this. So how do we get here when we're living with the fear? And that's the inner work, right? So many of us in the fear give up. And yet our desires are calling on us, and our desires are saying, have the drive to keep going, be persistent. Be resilient, be determined, be committed, be devoted to what it is that you want to create in your life, because you can, right? I think the hustle mentality really comes from the drive to reach our desires. But in our society, we're doing it wrong. We're doing it wrong because in that hustle mentality, so many of us are actually taking action from the energy of fear. And so we're not producing, we're not achieving our desires because that energy of fear is still so heavy in our bodies. So why not live with more peace? That's what we all want. Well, in order to live with more peace, we have to hold space for the fear. We have to feel it. We have to cleanse it. And then we get to know it. What is this fear? What is it stemming from? What happened to me as a child that rooted this fear so deeply in my being, right? We get to learn the patterns of the fear, what triggers us, right? I talked about earlier in this video about how I've worked through my fear of judgment and how as a young kid, I saw judgment in the world around me. And so that created a trigger to kind of lessen my differences. I felt like I couldn't be unique and I couldn't be different because then I wouldn't be accepted for who I am. So I conformed to who I thought I was supposed to be, right? And I was living from fear of judgment. And so that's the inner work. That's the work that I lead my clients through in my one-to-one mentoring program. It is work that you can do on your own, totally. It's also hard doing it on your own because living with fear is extremely challenging, and oftentimes we cannot connect the dots on where this fear is coming from and why it's coming forward and how it's blocking me. So if you want to dive deeper, if you want to overcome fear and you want to master your energy and you want to live from that peaceful state, my one-to-one mentoring program is the space for you, especially if you consider yourself an empath, right? But the thing that you can start working on is journaling and reflecting and getting to know your fear and getting to know your desires because they are on the other side, right? And the third thing that I think is the most important in this journey of living with fear is letting hope, trust, and faith win. Because right now, you're letting fear win. You're letting fear win. You are letting fear have power over you. And that doesn't feel good. And it keeps you stuck in the same place, repeating the same pattern over and over and over again because the fear is stopping you. It is stopping you in your tracks, right? If fear is here and desires are here, you're kind of moving like this and you get so far and then all of a sudden, you're right back to fear again. And then you're going and you're going and going and right back to fear again. And you're not reaching those desires because you are letting the fear stop you. And so in this beautiful spiritual journey, we get to practice letting trust, faith, and hope win, and not letting the fear win. And really what it comes down to is a choice that you make. It's a choice that you make, and it's what you prioritize in your main experience. So like I was saying earlier, yesterday I was in the fear. I was in it. I was in this dark cloud of believing that my life was never going to get better. I was putting my arms open and I was saying, I don't want to be here anymore. I don't want to experience this anymore. That's heavy. And that is what happens when we are in that state of fear. And at the same time, because I've practiced faith, and I have practiced hope, and I have practiced trust, I am here today saying I get to trust that it gets to be better. Because I felt the fear. I cleansed that energy from my body. I let that energy be released. And I'm here today and I'm saying, I know my fear. I know my desire. I have released the energy of fear and I am choosing hope. I am choosing to trust that my path gets to get better. I am choosing to trust that this is the path that I am meant to be on. I am choosing to have faith in myself, to have faith in the universe, and to have faith in this journey that we call life. I am making that choice. And so how do you prioritize those? Meditation. Meditation is the number one practice that every single spiritual teacher is going to say you need. And it's because we let our mind control our experience. Our mind is very powerful. And oftentimes our mind is moving through these patterned thoughts that are triggered from fear and that are triggered from pain. And so meditation allows you to step back and recognize, I'm not my mind. I'm not my thoughts. I'm the one listening to them. Meditation is a powerful tool. Meditation is also what I use to connect with my higher self, to connect with my spirit guides and my angels, to receive clarity and guidance and next action steps, right? Spiritual connection is also a huge part of my life. It is an important practice that I prioritize to help me to build trust, faith, and hope. Spiritual connection can look like many different things. I do ceremonies. I pull oracle cards. I talk to my guides. I connect to Mother Earth. I receive signs and messages, and I decipher what they mean. I connect with the energy of the moon. Living with fear is challenging, especially as an empath, because as an empath, you're not only feeling your own energy and emotions, you're feeling the energy and emotions of everyone around you and your environment. At the same time, we can live with fear and succeed. We can live with fear and thrive. We can live with fear and experience peace on a daily basis. You can create alignment with well-being. You can experience fulfillment, peace, serenity, bliss. You can experience what you desire living with fear. The thing that you need to learn is how to not let the fear overpower you. To not let the fear control you, because that's what's happening. And when we let the fear control us, we live as a smaller version of us. And that fear impacts everything. When we learn to live with fear based on these three practices, holding space for yourself, getting to know your fear because your desire is on the other side, and choosing trust, peace, hope, and faith, letting trust, peace, hope, and faith win. With those three things, we are living with fear and we are experiencing a life that we absolutely love because that fear is not controlling us. So I am here to tell you that we can live with fear and win. It's just up to you on what you're choosing. If this video training really resonated with you and really connected with you, please consider giving it a thumbs up. It really helps my content grow, and it helps more people like you and me to find this content when they need it the most. Leave a comment. Which one of these tips resonates with you the most? Or if you're in that fear, send me a message, send me an email. If you're struggling, right? Drop a comment below, because I want to hold space for you. I want you to win. I don't want your fear to win. I want you to win. You are this magnetic light that deserves to win. And right now, the fear is holding you back and it's blocking you. So, connect with me. Let's work together. You can fill out an application form right now if you're interested in my one-to-one mentoring offer. The link is below. If the one-to-one mentoring offer is not right for you and you want more of that membership space, then check out my meditation membership community, right? All the links to learn more about me are below. That is all that I have for you today. And I want to remind you that you can win. You can win. You can overcome this fear. Sending you all love and light on your journey. And I will chat with you next time. Bye, friends.